Howdy there, folks. It's Geist, and in today's video, I've got something very special for all you bow lovers out there. I interviewed the two best bow players in Destiny 2, using a series of questions asked by you guys in one of my recent posts, as well as a few questions of my own devising, just to find out their thoughts on the current state of bows in the game, as well as to introduce themselves if you don't already know who they are, which most of you probably do, and just to find out a little bit more about them and their styles. So without further ado, let's get to it.
Okay, so we'll start off. Thanks for joining me, guys. Thanks for agreeing to do this. That was pretty cool of you. So I guess just say hello. Say you first, Dream.
Hello, name's Deadream, and I'm a bow player.
And Steezle for the first
Hi,
time ever.
Dream. Yeah,
Hi,
I'm
Steezle.
Steezle. I'm also a recovering bow player.
Recovering bow player. All right, so we'll start with the first question. We'll start with you, Dream. How would you define your style?
Um, Passive aggressive. I'm always having to look for like some advantage in combat, something that's just ingrained in me. So I'd say my bursts of aggression always have to be followed by already hurting someone, getting them weak, things like that. But yeah, passive aggressive is probably the quickest I could explain what I think my play style is.
Okay,
Passive when I need to be, aggressive when I can.
and that makes sense. I'd also say you're a pretty patient player as well, for sure. And how about you, Steezle? How would you define your style?
Um, like the opposite of Dream. Like aggressively chaotic. I pretty much, I'm playing for the clip pretty much every time I play. So I just want to get into the fight. I don't care. I don't care what the conditions are, how many players there are. I like the action, and I like to try to fight my way out of the chaos.
Well, it certainly looks like a fun way to play. And on to the next one.
1% of the time it works out, it's really fun. The other 99, it's really frustrating.
Well, that's what all the highlight reels are for, right?
Yeah. Well, I try to be a montage player more than anything.
That aside, though, I mean, you're obviously still pretty good beside that. But anyways, so on to the next question. What would you say is your greatest strength, Deadream?
Sorry about that. My greatest strength. I don't know, actually. Probably
Sounds like driving down the highway while
being
playing.
like my. Yeah, no doubt. My my loadout is usually very burst damage heavy. So being able to do some type of two-hit combo, especially with bows, chaperones, whatever it is, some kind of two-hit thing that kills very quickly. That's probably
Okay.
the strongest thing in my kit.
Okay. And how about you, Steezle?
Um, I think my greatest strength is like I'm gonna take this is a greatest strength and my own weakness in a lot of instances is I'm gonna take all the attention from everybody in a fight. So it's a strength from a team sense, but I think I thrive when things are chaotic. So I'm always with the way I play on M&K and playing the radar with hip fire shots. I'm trying to plan out like the next like two fights, not just the 1v1 that I'm starting with. So I think because I'm so used to putting myself in chaotic situations, like I don't really panic when I'm in those situations. I kind of seek out those situations, if that makes sense.
You kind of like the lightning rod.
Yeah. And then I take all the punishment, as you'll see in all these clips right now.
I'm looking forward to checking it out in a minute. So next, following up on that one, how would you say what would be the best way to counter your style, or what is your greatest weakness? Dream?
My greatest weakness is easy. I'm always really trying to do some kind of play with the bow itself, where, like, I mean, I'm a controller chaperone main. Like, if I mained chaperone a lot more, I know I would be better in so many situations. But if I feel like there's a chance that I could make the play with the bow, like I usually default to that. So I'm pretty easy to bait. Like you can bait me to try to come out and make a stupid play with the bow that will get me killed.
Interesting.
Nice play.
And what about you, Steez?
It was greatest weakness. Or how
Greatest
to counter,
weakness
sorry.
or how to counter, either or both.
I think kind of like Dream said, my greatest weakness is like I'm playing so aggressive that I'm easy to catch in a really bad position. So I am very vulnerable to any form of one shot. Fusion rifles, sniper rifles, shotties, like if you can get up close to me, you're gonna get kills on me. It's not that difficult. So I put a lot of the pressure on myself to hit the shot. It's very much like a glass cannon play style. So that second that I miss, it's pretty much game over for me.
And that makes a lot of sense. Just from my own experience too, I would say that anytime getting aggro with a bow player can often spell their doom. Obviously, they don't have the TTK to match, just depending on what you guys are doing. So it makes perfect sense what y'all are saying. And let's see. Oh, here's a good one. This is more fun rather than serious. What perk combo would you like to see on a bow?
That one for me is pretty easy. I would love to see Archer's Tempo and Elemental Capacitor on opposite columns. I've always loved the idea of, especially because I main Dawnblade, like having that reload speed of like Ophidian without actually having to use Ophidians, I think would be like awesome. I'd be able to like main other exotics and not like feel like I'm giving up so much reload speed.
Absolutely, I'd love to see that combo as well. What about you, Steezle?
I like that idea a lot, and I've always said this, but I love slide shot as a perk, and for whatever reason, the idea you'll see, I'll try to do it. You'll probably see it in some of these clips, but I like to like slide draw to open an engagement, and I love the idea of being able to do that, and then immediately have the second arrow knocked. Because part of the thing I dislike with bows, and I'll do it on screen here. I don't know if you can capture it, but you can't actually knock an arrow while you're sliding. So even though I can start an engagement with hitting that first shot, I can't actually like continuously slide and try to knock the second arrow. But I love the idea of just being able to slide, hit the first shot, auto knock a second arrow, continue to draw slide in the same stompy slide, and hit a second shot really quickly.
That sounds pretty cool.
And then miss all of my shots on Dream. That's really fun.
I had the Skulking Wolf proc there from the bow, so I was like off radar for it.
Nice.
So the next one, to all players, whether new or veteran, what tips would you give them to help improve their bow play? Dream?
Timing. Like timing is such a big part of any gameplay that you do with a bow that I feel like, I mean, it's the biggest thing that you can practice. Like aim in Destiny in general, I feel is probably the least important thing. The game does most of the aiming for you, like especially at a higher level. So I think like your timing and your movement are things that just evolve and you get better with like infinitely. Like I still could have way better movement, way better timing. But like my aim, there's not a lot of times where I can get that much better. Like I think it's pretty much capped.
The timing of the
Okay.
chaperone shot you just hit as you said that could not have been better.
And what about you, Steezle?
I think I think part of it, and we'll probably go more in depth on like some of our differences too, but like understanding what kind of player you're trying to be. I see a lot of players, and I've shared opinions on like 1v1 versus like trial settings and sixes settings, but like I've seen a lot of players who can be really aggressive and get wins in a 1v1 scenario and then panic in a 1v2, 1v3 scenario. So I think it's like bows to me are some of the most versatile weapons in the game, and I think that's why they can be so frustrating to play against. But being able to use a bow in so many different settings and know how to like when to play your ADS shots or your hip fire shots and how to kind of bait your opponents to where you want them to be, I think is one of the biggest strengths of the bow. So whether you're a beginner or I think that's probably getting into more like experienced bow player stuff, but I think a lot of beginner bows, you'll probably just default to like, I'm going to peek shoot and play really passive, and it can be effective, but it's also like very predictable for an experienced player to know how to counter that. If they know where you're going to be and exactly what you're trying to do, try to switch it up, try to throw off your opponents, play your movement, take advantage of the versatility of a bow, and then just continue to practice that. And you're just going crazy like me and Dream here.
Makes sense. And that actually, you sort of partially segued into the next one. So we'll start with you again, Dream. Are you controller or M&K, and what sense do you use?
I'm controller, 14 cents with a 0.8 ADS modifier.
And is there a particular reason you like the controller so much, or just kind of what you're used to?
I'm just an old man, 34 years old. I've been gaming since I was 8 years old, and with a controller in my hand. If I could start over, or if I felt like, you know, if I was a younger man, I would 100% have started mouse and keyboard and did all that. But I'm just stuck in my ways. Feels as natural to me as, you know, writing with a pencil or something that I've done my entire life. I've tried switching to mouse and keyboard, and just the amount of retrain that I would have to give my brain, I just never been able to stick with it.
I fully understand that. I had something similar recently with that. I just couldn't do it. Controller was just it's too natural. It just felt too good. And clearly, you know, you do just fine on controller, so I think you're probably all right there. And what about you, Steezle?
Well, I have all my youth still in me. I'm only 32 years old, so old
You're
man Dream
both
just
young.
can't
So.
keep up. No, I switched to PC. I think it's probably 3 years ago at this point, maybe a little more. So I just made the switch from controller to M&K, and a large part of that was because of bow play. I thought it was way more fun on mouse and keyboard. I play 1600 DPI and I believe 4 in-game sense. And then I forget the first part of your question, but
I was just,
I
well, you
use
answered the
a-
first part. The only other thing was kind of, I guess, why you prefer it, or, you know.
oh yeah, for me it's,
But
I
you
mean,
sort of answered that too, I think.
yeah, with how aggressive I play, a lot of my play is just like trying to go crazy with movement and hip fire shots. So I couldn't do that on controllers effectively, and it just felt more fluid doing that on M&K. So trying to play into the hip fire play style, not just for bows. Like I love hip fire weapons in this game in general, and that's, you know, one of the few things I'd say is substantially easier on mouse and keyboard when it comes to aiming.
Definitely makes sense. I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about when to hip fire and when not, and I was like, on controller it feels like you just ADS a lot of the time unless they're kind of really close.
I'm sure you can do it, but not to the same extent or same ease as you can on mouse and keyboard. So that is definitely something I consider a mouse and keyboard advantage.
Oh yeah.
Nice shot.
And then the next
Thank you.
question here, what do you think makes the difference between newer and veteran bow players? Dream?
Probably also like a timing thing for me, and like how aggressive you're comfortable with. I feel like when you're first starting out with a bow, it feels like a weapon that you have to play passive with, like really passive with. Like you have to use it almost like a scout rifle or a sniper with unlimited ammo. And like Steezle said earlier, it's definitely way more versatile. When you get to the point where it feels more like a hand cannon that you get to just two-tap with, like that's to me the difference between a really experienced bow player and somebody that's just starting out. Just how aggressive they're comfortable with playing.
Okay. And what about you, Steezy Wonder?
Yeah, a lot of what Dream just said. I think you'll see it primarily in like the movement of a player. Like it's very natural. Like Dream was saying, you pick up a bow and it just feels like you're supposed to play very passive and kind of peek shoot and just kind of stay in the back like you would a sniper. But I think you can tell if you, I don't know, you queue into a trials match and you see a player with unmasterwork gear and a bow, you can pretty much assume they're kind of strafing back and forth, just kind of crouch walking or strafe walking with the bow fully drawn. They don't really understand the re-knocking and resetting of the draw on an arrow. So there's those kind of things that I think separate like a newer player from a very experienced player. Somebody who can jump, slide, move around, know how to bait shots, and know how to properly play angles and when to peek shoot. You can really tell a lot of that just from the movement of that player.
Makes sense. And this next one is sort of it's our last question, but it's kind of going to be a combination of a few different things. It's definitely going to be a bigger discussion. Certainly a hot button topic right now that a lot of people are kind of discussing. So I'm going to break it up just a little bit and kind of ping pong between the two of you. First and foremost, do you think bows are meta, Dream?
No, I don't think they're meta. I really don't.
Okay.
I think that they're strong. I think when you're talking about something that's meta, especially like for a weapon, for abilities and like supers, you have to have like maybe 3 columns, but that being how strong something is, how easy it is to use, and how fast the ability comes back. For a weapon, I think it's just how strong something is and how easy it is to use. And I feel that bows are in that situation where they're strong, but they're not easy to use. They might have gotten easier to use in the long term because so many other things have been nerfed really hard and made not as strong. So that might be the reason why you're seeing such an uptick in them. But I don't think they are easy to use. Like a great example would be something like Jotun. I think is very easy to use, but honestly not that strong. But it's really easy to use. Something like a fusion rifle is strong, but not extremely strong, but extremely easy to use. And I just feel like that's where that kind of comes into play.
Makes sense.
So I don't think they're meta.
And what about you, Steezle?
I wouldn't say they're meta. I think they're definitely very strong, but I think the nature of Destiny with the amount of guns and gunplay and that being the main draw that a lot of players have, it's so many more players will just default to being able to use a hand cannon, an auto rifle, pulse rifle. It's just a more natural play style. So it's part of the reason I started using bow in the first place was back in the earlier days, you just never saw it. You never really saw a really good bow player. I thought it was unique and it felt like it had a higher floor and higher potential ceiling. So I think because of that reason, you're never going to see a catch on as like the go-to popular, like undefeatable or unchallengeable meta option.
I definitely get that. Maybe it's just the contrarian in me, but I definitely enjoyed feeling like I was part of a select group that was using them back when, and really just felt the draw of just something I enjoyed doing in the real world. So it was kind of cool to see it represented in a video game that was so popular.
Yep. I think part of the reason you're seeing a lot more discussion on it and players are kind of resorting to things like Wishfinder and playing passively is if you look at not just what the meta is. Oh, nice connections there. That was sick. I think part of it is like if you watch my gameplay, I try to play really aggressive and I'm usually fighting in like 25 meter, like what I call like the BS range where there's so many insanely easy or crazy ways to die with fusion rifles, shotguns, melees. Like there's so much that can happen close range. So to try to pull off a bow in that range doesn't make much sense. So for a newer player or a less experienced player who's trying to make a bow work, obviously it makes more sense to like play your advantage from range and try to put in damage from afar and just avoid that BS zone. That doesn't mean you can't pull off plays in that zone with a bow. It's just like, why take that risk when it's so much easier to use something else in that range?
Makes sense. And sort of
That's cool.
second half of that last question there, you guys sort of were already touching on this, but how do you feel about the general outcry involving bows right now, and do you think they need a nerf? Dream?
Yeah. I think the outcry is based off the fact that bows were created during a time in Destiny that might as well have been a different game. Like, you got to think about the beginning of Forsaken and how crazy the meta was in the beginning. Like you had a 180 hand cannon, two 180 hand cannon that could two head one body, and you had pellet shotguns that could map from legit 14, like a god roll Dust Rock Blues could map from 14 meters away. So, and every weapon had really extreme ranges. Erentil with 40 meters of range and a charge time that was similar to adaptives now. Like bows during that time, if anyone could actually say with a straight face that bows have always been OP and a meta secret pick, like they don't remember that time apparently, because I've used this loadout through every meta of Destiny, and there's been very few times that I thought I was secretly doing something that was easier to do than what everyone else was doing.
Right.
I've rarely felt that. So I think bows there was always a bigger fish than bows, and that's why they were never nerfed, and they've stayed largely the same, almost exactly the same, since Forsaken all this time. So I think just everything else has been balanced and nerfed, and ranges have been messed with, that it just, it still feels really strong, and everything's kind of gone below it. I think that's a big part of why they feel so broken and overpowered right now. And because of that, I mean, if we've gotten to the point where everything has been nerfed so bad that now special weapon snipers, rapid frame snipers, need to be nerfed because Bungie thinks they do too much damage to the body at 90 per shot, a special weapon, then an unlimited range and unlimited ammo primary shouldn't do close to that damage either. There should be something there. I don't know if it needs a nerf or it needs to be changed, but if we're at that point, then I completely understand and I'm okay with a nerf. I really am.
All right. What about you, Steezle?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with the nerf, and I think I understand why a lot of players are annoyed by bows right now. Especially when things like I won't make any friends with this argument, I'm sure, but things like Oathkeepers kind of taking away a lot of the skill gap of a bow can make it very frustrating. So a lot of times you see people complain about bows and try to demonstrate how impressive they are. You'll always hear them say just bows in general, and then the build they run to demonstrate it is an Oathkeeper Monarch or an Oathkeeper Wishender, which are arguably some of the most aggravating things to fight even as a bow main. So I don't enjoy fighting that. I'm sure non-bow users, it just fuels all that frustration. So I totally get that. I think trying to rework things in a way that incentivizes aggressive bow play and not passive bow play. So you think, I've made this argument before to friends, but think of Oathkeepers like Peacekeepers for SMG, where you have better movement, better draw time, which it already has, better AE, those kind of things make sense, but incentivize movement, not just holding a perfect draw with max accuracy and making it really easy to hit an already pretty easy to hit shot from range. I'm fine with that kind of concept being applied to bows in general. So I know they already have a drop off coded for bows. I think it's 55 meters for precisions and 45 for lightweights, which honestly you could probably lower that even more. But I think that's a good starting point to push players away from passive bow play and into the aggressive bow play, which realistically is just more fun. I also think bows are getting a lot more attention and a lot more use right now because historically we have not been able to craft bows, and bows are without a doubt the most frustrating archetype of weapon to try to grind random roll for, because you need an absolute 5 out of 5, you need the masterwork, you need the draw time, you need the arrow shafts, you need the perks on top of all that. So historically it's been very difficult to get a very strong bow, and it was a lot easier to just put La Monarch on. It's an exotic, it has a crazy hitbox, it's crazy strong across the board. So it was a lot less common to fight a very experienced bow player with a very good roll on a bow. And now anybody can just kind of craft a really good usable precision or lightweight frame. They've both been buffed from the recent patches, so it makes sense you're seeing a lot more people use bows and bows be a lot more effective. But like Dream said, there's always been better options and crazier metas. So having also used bows through some of the most frustrating metas, trying to fight Revokers and Recluse and Mountaintops with a bow back in the early days of comp was not fun. So between suffering as a bow player in that time frame and suffering as a bow player grinding all my perfect random roll bows, like we've suffered too. So we've been through it. But I understand the frustration. I'm perfectly fair with literally everything in this game being a little more skill based and a little harder to use. But I don't know that that will ever be the case across the board. But I'm perfectly fine with making bows a little more difficult, leveling that field a little bit.
All right.
Yeah, my single greatest achievement, I think, in gaming, just single best feeling in gaming that I've ever achieved, is the very first season of Forsaken, getting a not forgotten in comp with a subtle calamity and a chaperone. Like, I don't think I'll ever achieve anything to myself. I don't think I'll ever achieve anything greater in gaming. Like, it was such a rough time in being able to do it with that loadout. Like, that was it for me. I peaked it out early.
Certainly a different time too, fighting those hand cannons back in their heyday.
Dream's timing of his commentary with his plays, I don't know if you'll be able to sync this up, but saying I peaked too early as he hits me with the perfect peak shot chaperone is pretty sick to see firsthand. So I hope that comes through.
We'll have to see. I think I've got it timed up pretty well. But that's pretty much all I had for you guys. You got any other final thoughts, comments, anything you want to throw out there?
Okay, really. I appreciate you putting this together. Dream, a pleasure playing with you and not against you. Really enjoyed being able to do a montage, but actually being able to play firsthand and see this insanity is pretty cool. So thanks for organizing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Like, trust me, anytime and I mean this to so many other people that I watch play too, but especially Steezle. I mean, you guys see him, all the plays that he pulls and the cool stuff he pulls off.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This
being able to do,
I
sure.
hope that one comes through.
for sure.
Hey, everything you guys got recorded
But,
right now,
yeah.
I'll find it. They'll see it.
You'll enjoy that ending.
Alrighty. Well, thanks again, you guys. I appreciate you both taking the time to do this. I'm sure a lot of people will find this interesting, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, man. And GG's, Dream.
Yeah, thank you. GG, Steve.
All right.